How's my? I'm not too choppy, right?
No, it's actually not bad.
Okay, I have a very primitive
sailing
setup here, Jordan.
Yeah.
Your internet must have warmed up.
Yeah, yeah. I cranked it a few times.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have a foot pedal, like a sewing machine, to keep the router going, and then the actual computer is like two rusty tin cans that you just kind of.
No, that's what I record into. I'm recording into an empty can of beans with yarn that attaches it to my laptop.
You have like one bean on a skewer that you're holding over like a Bunsen burner.
Don't burn it, man. That's dessert. The dessert, when you finish the end of a can of beans, the dessert is just the one last bean at the bottom of it. Actually, that's not true. The actual dessert.
The dessert is the piece of pork.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Exactly. The little disgusting piece of bacon at the bottom.
Delicious.
It's not disgusting.
No, it's
it's
fantastic,
delicious. What are you
yeah.
talking about? It's amazing.
Question for you guys.
Yes.
Is there anything wrong with room temperature beans?
No.
What? What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm
Cold
just checking.
beans
Some
are fine.
people-
Jordan, do you want to weigh
Cold
in?
beans are every temperature bean.
I'm not a huge fan. I'd like to warm them up, but if I'm heating them up, I might take
get
a
out
room
of here.
check. Wait, hold on.
Please, could everybody
Canceled.
thank our guest for his one and only performance on Eat the Rich?
I'll take a nibble. It's not my favorite, but I'll try it. I'll dabble.
You'll take a nibble of a single bean.
No, I'll take like a spoonful of room temp beans.
Spoonful of room temperature beans.
How did we? Oh wait. How did we even get on this? All right, go on.
This is the topic tonight. That's what you guys told me to prepare for.
That's what we got you here for.
Well, it's important. We talk about.
We're talking about Mr. Bean and his criminal empire.
He was on the Epstein flight logs parody.
Allegedly, Mr. Bean, 16 different visits to Little St. James Island, allegedly.
He was his roommate, man.
Mr. Bean found suicided in his cell.
God, Jordan, do you know any good lawyers? I'm glad that no one has said in a while that they think that we're all lawyers, because for whatever reason,
No,
I don't even
multiple
remember-
people have.
Some
What are you
people
talking
have
about?
said that. Yeah, it's
Some
weird.
people have said that.
It's
yeah.
weird too that I feel like sometimes I feel like a solid 50 to 75% of the people who follow me on Twitter are lawyers. It's really weird.
They're concerned about you. Chris.
As they should be. As they should be.
Concerned.
It's like that old joke from like the 60s where like all of Chris's followers are actually deep plants by various intelligence agencies and they're all in like a room together and trying to pretend that they're like weird Twitter accounts or whatever.
Man, if that's true, good on them, because Chris gets great engagement.
Yeah, congrats on the engagement, Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, congratulations.
Because you're engaged?
Hell no. Absolutely not.
I've also noticed too that there's been an increase of Zoomer fans. There's been a lot of Zoomer engagement, people being like, hey, no, it's not just millennials, I'm a Zoomer and I feel this way as well. Shout out to the Zoomer fans.
Well, sure, because I feel like I've reached a point where I feel like I'm 32 years old and I feel old online now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been meaning to tell you, you kind of come off as old online.
No, I posted my Spotify fucking year in review thing last night,
dude.
and it was just
dude.
it's Hank Williams Jr. and Charlie Daniels and Fish and Hot Tuna and literally all country stuff, nothing that's no new music of within the past 40 years basically. And there's nothing wrong with that. I stand by it. Goddammit.
Who were your guys' number one artist last year?
Fish. Oh yeah, what was yours, by the way? Was it the cast of Hamilton doing the soundtrack for the musical Hamilton?
No, I'm not telling you.
So what I'm referring to is Jordan posted his year in review, but obscured who the number one spot was.
I might tell Dwight. That's it.
It can't. I was gonna say it can't diverge vastly from the rest of the genres that are in the top.
No, because when I tell you, you'll understand why I obscured it.
I know exactly who it is.
You can message me all the time.
I know.
You probably.
I know.
can figure it out.
I don't even.
Don't
need
say
to...
it on. Don't say it on the air. But
I'm not gonna say it. No,
probably
I know exactly who it is.
It's not like we're live.
I know exactly who it is. And I understand the reasoning for you obscuring.
Yeah, dude, it fucking sucks. I do not want it to be number one.
It's a shame because they're so good.
All right, let's move on because I don't want to talk about this. It sucks. I'll tell you guys afterward, and it'll make a lot of sense. Dwight, I think, knows immediately why.
I doubt I'll even know.
Same here. I doubt I'll even know who it is or why.
But when we tell you why, it'll make more sense. You don't need to know the band.
Okay. Okay.
I'm muted right now. It was Herman's Hermits.
I don't even use Spotify, but I don't need an app to tell me what music I've been listening to. It's the same 4 movie soundtracks over and over again. No words, except occasionally like a Red Army March song or something. It's the only music that I listen to.
Which soundtracks?
The Pirates of the Caribbean one is fantastic. If you wake up in the morning, you just feel like you're going on an adventure. What's going to happen today?
Shane.
You might run into half a fish, half a man. Who knows?
Yeah.
Shane. No.
Lord of the Rings. Great soundtrack.
I've never seen any of that.
Interstellar's got a good soundtrack. That's a good one. I like that one.
I don't know what it was.
The Avengers soundtrack.
Oh, fuck.
Are we we're just naming soundtracks now?
Top 5 favorite soundtracks
Star
of the
Wars
decade.
had a soundtrack, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Sister Act 2 soundtrack.
Classic soundtrack. I do like the Imperial March from Star Wars. Sometimes I just walk around my neighborhood and listen to that.
Yeah. I think it's great.
Succession, excellent soundtrack in my opinion. The Succession main theme popped up on my Spotify.
The Sopranos main theme.
Oh yeah,
a great morning commute song. I don't care if you're on public transit, if you're walking, if you're driving in your car. You put that on in the morning, you feel
like Tony Soprano.
Like a bag of gold. You feel just like a soprano.
If there's anybody that's listening to this that can help me find this YouTube video from, honestly, it was probably 10 years ago, but it was some guy like when The Sopranos was still going on who clearly just like had it all leach into his brain and he thought that he was like in The Sopranos or whatever, and he was in a gyro shop. In my head it was in Philly, but he was like wearing a leather jacket and he was like, Maron, where the fuck is my gyro? Dude, get the fuck out of here. Where's my gyro? Oh, you better not fuck with me, dude. And there was like a guy that was standing in front of him, and after like who was just waiting for his food, and after the guy was like was escalating it to the point of like, yo, we might need to call the cops on this guy. The dude that in front of him that was waiting for his food, he was like, dude, get the fuck out of my face. What the fuck's wrong with you? And the guy was like, dude, I'm an assistant DA. Like, stop. If anybody can find that, please message it to me.
That's actually how Dwight and Chris met. That's what that story is.
I don't want to. We should probably explain to Jordan that like in the beginning we just usually end up just doing a little banter for like 5 minutes.
Did you not explain that to him when I was out?
We didn't say anything. I'm so sorry, Jordan.
We bullshit for a while and then we actually get into it.
Okay, so let's just out of curiosity here, let's wait till Chris gets in.
That should be the last of my disruptions for the next 2 hours. I hope I had to retrieve some very important documents.
What did Carpe Donktum want?
I had to chase him with a broom back to his fucking little cubbyhole under the stairs. He was tweeting about me the other night. I actually forgot to reply to him. Like someone tagged him into my replies, and he kept talking about me. It was kind of funny.
That's such a funny back and forth. I like that he's like leaning into it now.
It's like a Batman Joker type thing. I think we've accepted that we're just gonna keep fighting like this forever, and that's just from time to time.
When an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Yeah, from time to time we have to spar, man.
Jordan, are you still blocked by him?
Yeah, because of Chris. Because I followed Chris. I never tweeted at him or anything, and I liked reading the tweets, but then he just blocked everyone that followed Chris.
What's funny to me, and I feel sort of bad. I feel sort of bad because like we had Will Summer on a couple weeks ago as well, and like this is a guy who like researches and reports on the far right, like that's his job. And I'm sure there's other journalists who follow me, like that's their job, and then I got them blocked. I got them all indiscriminately blocked by this guy.
Chris, this is their livelihood.
Whatever.
You obviously feel no remorse.
It was a bit, man. It was a bit.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Do you guys, I don't know if you remember this, but you remember in like the mid-2000s, there was like a short-run release of Sacagawea coins?
Oh, yeah.
Like the kind of like faux gold dollar coins.
Yeah.
So when those came out in New York City, like the MTA machines like only gave those back. So for example, if you had like a $20 bill and you bought a $4 MetroCard, it would give you 16 of these coins back. And so I just perpetually had like little sacks of these these coins on me, and I would try to spend them, and there was this one deli that always fought me about it, and there was this like old Italian guy behind the thing, and I would go in there to get like a cup of coffee, and I would try to pay for it with one of these coins, and he would always call them doubloons, and he would refuse to take them. Like, I ain't taking these fucking doubloons. I was like, it's $1. Like, it's U.S. currency. He's like, nah, you can't pull one over on me.
They had those in the MTA machines like 3 years ago, like not super long ago.
I believe they still do. They have the presidential coins in there now, right?
Oh, Christ. Nobody wants dollar coins.
The MTA machines still return dollars, don't they? Dollar coins? I think they do.
Yeah, but they're coins only. It's probably like to retrofit them back to be able to dispense like paper currency would be fucking prohibitively expensive or something, and they just don't do it. They're like, everybody likes these coins. You can give them away at Christmas. You give them to your little nephew. They're good.
I had after 9/11, I got the all of my stories start like that, but I got the that like do you remember they did like the state quarters?
Yeah,
I collected those.
I did too, man.
Absolutely.
And I remember when I finally got all 50 states and I put them in this like fucking booklet that I had gotten to fit them in, just this profound feeling of emptiness came over me. And that was the moment that I just lost all faith in the American project.
Now when I was a young boy, about the age of 5, my teachers taught me I could be the greatest man alive. They told me I could change the world, be whatever I wanted to be. There was no one in the world like me. Every one of us was so unique. I'd not be an average man. No, sir, I'd be no average man. So I had those big dreams.
Welcome back, everybody, to Eat the Rich. This is a show about our political economy, late-stage capitalism, and the millionaires, billionaires, and multinational corporations hell-bent on staving off its death rattle. I'm Dwight. We have today with us Shane.
Hey, how you doing?
We have Chris.
Howdy, folks.
And we are super excited to have with us one of our buddies, Jordan Uhl, progressive activist. Jordan, welcome to Eat the Rich.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
It was probably inevitable that we would get to this topic because he is just one of the worst and most reprehensible people, I think, in media today and probably as a living organism today, which is saying a lot. Tucker Carlson. I know that you probably have a lot of your brain melted from just ingesting an enormous amount of his content, and so we were delighted that you were interested in coming on to talk about him. Tell us your perspective. Poison the rest of us with what you know.
Oh, I wish I didn't know as much as I do about this guy. He's just like, he's an absolute ghoul, and I know that word gets thrown around a lot, and, pretty liberally these days, but, like, if you think about the worst, like, most grotesque people in Washington and in politics and people who make it as bad as it is and the most like contemptuous entity and this beltway culture. I mean, in so many ways, Tucker embodies all of this. Tucker is someone who is extremely rich and has been extremely rich since before he entered his professional career. He's a boarding school kid, a private college, super elite, and he has ingratiated himself among right-wing thought leaders, if you will. The National Review, the conservative magazines like the Spectator. What's that? The fucking Spectator, and the pseudo-intellectual like conservative bullshit. He has like kind of ingratiated himself among those types throughout his career, and now he has worked his way up to Fox News after a brief stint on MSNBC, and before that famously on Crossfire, in which Jon Stewart just fucking obliterated him.
Hell yeah.
So good.
But he's just like this like goody two shoes, wealthy, bratty, formerly bow tie wearing wealthy kid who had everything handed to him, and now he uses his bully pulpit on cable TV every night to attack the homeless, demonize the poor, demonize and smear and incite hatred toward immigrants and people that are different than us, Muslims, women, everyone who pretty much isn't a Christian white male. Like, he is like the WASP archetype. You know, I have nothing but ill will for Tucker Carlson.
Hell, you're in good company. Yeah, he's a waspy looking motherfucker.
Yeah, you know who he looks like? You know, you ever see that movie, The Purge, the first Purge movie? You know who he looks like, especially when he was a little bit younger. He looks like, what's that kid's name? Like the leader of that group.
I thought you were gonna say he looks like one of the masks.
Well, kind of.
Do you mean the first Purge movie or the first Purge, the movie?
The first movie that was released, not the one called The First Purge.
I never saw the first one.
It is young Tucker. It was this kid who was leading him. He was wearing like the blue blazer, the maroon tie, had the blonde hair combed back.
Yeah, he's like the bad guy from every 1980s
Absolutely.
like summer camp movie.
Absolutely.
Like, he's the leader of like the mean preppy summer camp, or like the opposing snowboarding team, or whatever the fuck.
Or he's the son of like the rich dude who's like come to town to like buy up the hospital and turn it into like, you know what I mean? Turn it into like his new corporate headquarters or something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Dwight, you had something about. I guess we want to talk a little bit about Tucker's origin story, and his father was a guy named Dick Carlson. You got a little bit about that, Dwight?
Unfortunately, I do. In honestly, like I've been looking into just Tucker Carlson's origin story, which is like he's a prep school shithead and whatever.
Yes.
But the story behind the family is fucking bananas, and I refuse to believe that it didn't have a direct impact on his lack of empathy for people. It's bad. So Dick Carlson is an interesting character. I'm going to go through a lot of stuff, but there's just so much of it that just blows my mind. So the deal with Dick Carlson, he was born in all right.
Sorry, it's just funny to me.
He was born in 41, so he's silent generation. He was born to a college student named Richard Boynton, who was 18, and a girl named Dorothy Anderson, who was 15.
Canceled.
Jesus Christ.
Canceled.
Dick Carlson was born with rickets and bent legs because Anderson, his mother, starved herself to keep her pregnancy a secret.
Jesus Christ.
After he was born, he was given away to an orphanage in Boston, and he in the house that he ended up adopting him, or a foster family, he got very close to them. He was there for a few years. It was a family called the Mobergers. He said it was a good time in his life. He'd been bonded with that family, and then many prospective parents had come to visit him to adopt him, one of which was his own birth mother posing as her sister. Can you fucking can you like imagine that? Then it gets worse. His birth father, Richard Boynton, asked Anderson, his birth mother, to help him kidnap Dick Carlson and run away to get married. The night that the mother refused the father's offer, the father committed suicide 2 blocks from the house.
Oh my God.
What the fuck? He was eventually adopted into another family, the Carlson family, which is where the name came from. And Carlson's adopted father died when he was 12. When he was 15, he joined the Navy. And this is like some weird Gatsby shit.
When he was 15, he joined the Navy?
I'm sorry. When he was 17, he joined the Navy. Which isn't even that much better, by the way.
Yeah,
fucking 17? Are you fucking kidding? He purchased his first tuxedo when he was 17, saying because he developed a taste for high society and described himself as ebullient, which I'm going to have to look up, like Nelson Rockefeller. He ended up going ROTC at University of Mississippi, but was discharged and did not graduate. He then moved to Los Angeles. This is where it gets interesting, if it wasn't already. When he was 22, he got a job working as a copy boy, blah, blah, blah. He ended up working for a Hearst columnist named Luella Parsons. He did shit with the Hollywood Foreign Press. I'm just like going through this. He became best known for a magazine article in Look magazine where they linked the mayor of San Francisco to organized crime. The mayor, Aliotto, later filed a $12 million libel lawsuit, and the judge found it to be false and defamatory and made with actual malice and disregard for the truth. Carlson stood by the story. I don't know, it's probably true. Yada, yada, yada. He had a checkered media career, and it ended when he was working as an investigative reporter, and he left the job after 18 months. He said it's a kid's game, it's insipid and sophomoric and superficial, and he admitted to being part of a piece that outed a local tennis player, a woman named Dr. Renee Richards, as transsexual. Not great. Then he became a banker.
Naturally.
He joined
As one does, yeah.
As one does.
Sure.
In 1977, he joined San Diego Federal Savings and Loan, headed by the former cabinet member and close friend of Ronald Reagan, a gentleman named Gordon Luce, and he's joined as his public affairs director. Yes. It's so good. Within 3 years, he was vice president of finance because it was the 70s and you could just fucking fail up. It came under controversy because in 1984, the bank received negative press for allowing Edwin Meese, an advisor to Ronald Reagan, to be 15 months delinquent on his mortgage. So if you're friends with Ronald Reagan, you get to not pay your mortgage for a year.
Good old Meese.
Later that year, bank officers were accused of receiving several federal jobs in exchange for being favorable towards Meese. Luce said that he saw the loans to Meese as a natural evolution of mixing business, politics, and friendship. Interestingly, just an interesting note, 60 Minutes had Mike Wallace doing an interview of Dick Carlson, about the home foreclosures in the bank and stuff like that. And Carlson had hired the camera crew to videotape the interview. And when 60 Minutes cameras were not rolling during a commercial break, Carlson's cameras picked up Wallace making a racist joke about black people and Hispanic people, saying, "You bet your ass the contracts are hard to read if you're reading them over watermelon or tacos."
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
How do you like that?
Oh my God.
In 1984, he ran for mayor of La Jolla, California, because the incumbent was under indictment for perjury and conspiracy. He was criticized for pledging not to spend his own money on the campaign, but he ended up spending $250,000 on his own money and gay baiting by falsely claiming that Hedgecock, the incumbent, was supported by the gay community in an effort to turn voters away. Carlson also had a comic at one of his major fundraisers who told a series of racist jokes. He spent $1.2 million on the campaign to become fucking mayor of La Jolla, California. He outspent Hedgecock, the incumbent, by 2-1 and lost. He then became the director of Voice for America, which was a government-funded, state-owned multimedia agency.
CIA.
He then became ambassador to the Seychelles.
Mm-hmm.
As one does when one is doing totally legitimate business.
That's correct. And then, interestingly, was sent to, in 92, on behalf of George W. Bush, to be the CEO of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for 5 years in an effort to make it less liberal. So that's him. Now, what's interesting, too, about him is that he was married to Tucker Carlson's mother, a woman named Lombardi, Lisa Lombardi. They had 2 kids. One was Tucker. The other one was Buckley.
Unbelievable. Every time I read the name Buckley Carlson, if you think Tucker is bad, just Buckley Carlson is.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Here are my 2 sons, Tuck and Buck.
What's weirder about it, too, is that their names in the beginning, the names at birth were Tucker McNear Carlson.
Yes.
That was Lisa's.
Yes.
Right. And then there was Buckley Peck Carlson. Then,
yes,
after
his middle name was Peck. Come on.
It gets better, man.
After Dick Carlson divorced from the boy's mother, he married Patricia Caroline Swanson, an heiress to the Swanson frozen food fortune. Mm-hmm. And she's also the daughter, a dude named Gilbert, fuck him, whatever, another heir. And she's the niece of Senator William Fulbright. Later on in the boy's life, Tuck and Buck, they added Swanson as a middle name.
So weird, dude. It's so weird.
Well, it'll tie into what we talk about later, which I think is there's like a kind of like ruling class LARPing going on, because I don't get the sense that obviously he was Dick Carlson was a fucking orphan, like he didn't grow up with any money,
right.
And then they just, after marrying Patricia Swanson, just became fucking unimaginably wealthy. But that's the story. I had to get that out. That's the story of Dick Carlson. That is fucking Tucker Carlson's dad. That's the guy he grew up with, and I guess he got a divorce. And Tucker Carlson, when he's talked about his birth mother, obviously is like, I think they divorced when he was 10, and he was very down on her, saying that she just wanted to be an artist and wanted to pursue a, quote, bohemian lifestyle. And she, I guess, ended up splitting her time between South Carolina and France, as you do. So that's Dick Carlson there. That's Tucker Carlson's dad.
The thing about his mom living this bohemian lifestyle, I feel like, from everything I understand about him, he gets really mad whenever anyone brings up his birth mom. He doesn't like to talk about it. He avoids it at all costs. And then I also look at how he talks about people who don't live like traditional lifestyles. Like, you could apply it to that. And I'm not trying to conflate the two because these are very real circumstances, but like the way he talks about homeless people and the way he talks about people who live outside or experiencing homelessness or anything like that, I just just feel like there's some deeply rooted issues that inform his views on homeless people.
for sure.
And the way he talks about them being smelly and unclean. And I feel like there's so much of that has to do with his mom.
Totally agree.
Trying to
Totally agree.
armchair therapist here.
Tucker Carlson was originally from San Francisco as well, and like one of the trademark repeat topics of his show, and I guess Bill O'Reilly even before him, but Tucker is like Fox News' favorite topic is homelessness in San Francisco, and like they try to blame it on the mismanagement of a liberal run city. That's the way they try to frame it. But Tucker Carlson talks about homelessness in San Francisco all the time.
I don't know why it ended up being such like a cudgel, because even like I've talked to like reactionaries here in New York City about like, oh, it's terrible. They just have this idea in their head, like, look what the politicians did to San Francisco, that it's overrun by homeless people. And obviously we talked about this last week on the show about your experience with that, Chris.
Sure.
And I like re-listened to it again today actually, and it just stuck out of my mind. You think about a guy like Tucker Carlson that grew up with that unimaginable wealth, or that ended up coming into unimaginable wealth when he was 10, and then seeing disparity around him and how that could have impacted him. And he was like, no, they're the problem, was his conclusion.
I mean, this is something I might get into a little bit more detail later, but like one of the psychological cornerstones of fascism is the loss of status. And that can be like ascribed in a lot of different ways, like socially, economically, and both on like a meta societal level, but then also on an individual level, like this fear that you're going to slip underneath some social line and join the ranks of those that you look down upon. And a lot of fascist psychology has come from people who did make that transition, or who rode those lines at various different times in their life, right? Like people who, in that case, maybe being young and then having this experience with his birth mom and a certain kind of economic life, and then entering into a new world, and as you said, sort of LARPing, taking on a whole new name, a whole new personality. I would imagine that certainly a lot of the projection that you see in his rhetoric does come from like a personal fear of like, that I don't want to lose what I've now attained, kind of thing.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
So, Dwight, you touched a little bit on, I guess, no, actually, Jordan, you touched a little bit on, Tucker's career throughout the 90s and, with the Weekly Standard, and how he sort of had this, before he transitioned over to TV, he sort of had this reputation as like this bullshit pseudo-intellectual, like he was a thinking man's conservative. In fact, Christopher Hitchens, friend of the show, who I've mentioned a few times, Christopher Hitchens was a great admirer.
He's on next week, right?
Yeah. I wonder if we could get his brother. That'd be kind of funny. We should trick Peter Hitchens into coming on the show. But no, Christopher Hitchens was, a great admirer of his, and sort of described him as, one of the great sort of intellectual, writers on the right. It's funny now to see Tucker's transition into where he is in television in the Trump era, but I also imagine that Christopher Hitchens would almost certainly be a regular guest on Tucker Carlson's show nowadays, talking about the scourge of Muslim immigration or whatever. But I guess what I'm getting at, Jordan, is I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, or maybe you can explain a little bit about this transition from, Tucker Carlson as like this thinking man's intellectual conservative writer to this like fucking demagogue we see on television nowadays.
So I think the one thing that people from their baseline needs to be an understanding that Tucker Carlson, outside, other than just a standard conservative worldview, believes actually like nothing. He has no firmly held beliefs. This guy is just a pure opportunist. He wants to get ahead. He's self-serving, self-aggrandizing. Media seems to be his avenue of choice. Whatever he can do to get ahead in media, that's it. So I think this divergence from the thinking conservative archetype to this populist right-wing defender of the working person that he portrays himself to be on TV an hour every night, that's rooted in his just opportunism. And the thing is, like, it's not really surprising when you think about who his friends are. One of his friends is Cenk Uygur of TYT. And Cenk is someone who similarly saw the rise of Trump based on his populist message. And this is just, they saw where the wind was going. Michael Moore, I don't think they like each other, but Michael Moore was another person who similarly saw this rise of populism. Tucker's not an idiot. He's not brilliant, but he's very clever. And when you understand that this is an insidious guy who's opportunistic and just wants to get ahead, this shape-shifting seems to make a little bit more sense. And it took me a little bit to realize it. I spent a lot of time listening to the Bubba the Love Sponge episodes, way too much time, like dozens and dozens of hours listening to those. totally different guy. Some things remain constant. I mean, at his core, he's kind of just a libertarian, I think, because it's the easiest to defend. When you're backed up against a wall, you can just throw your hands up and be like, government shouldn't do it. And then you never actually have to defend anything. You have a cop-out in all arguments. And that seems to be his thing, except when he gets like on TV and there's no one there to counter him. Then he's advocating to raise homeless camps in San Francisco or Los Angeles and all this like sickening bullshit, calling people dirty and they make us poorer and dirtier and more divided and all this bullshit. But Tucker doesn't actually believe anything. He's an opportunist. And his books have diverged wildly over the years. His writing has varied. And now he's at the point where this is where the winds are going. This is how he can get the most access. This is how he can get the most flattery and job security by cozying up to power and says just enough to make it look like he is actually speaking truth to power from a right-wing perspective. And a lot of people have always thought that he was kind of like the one Fox host who wouldn't cozy up to Trump. But maybe the only issue where they break is foreign policy, especially when he wants an insurgent or interventionist message. But I realized a couple months ago, Tucker's son was an intern in Trump's comms department at the White House.
Really?
So clearly isn't posing too much of a threat if they're willing to take on little Tucker. It's a long-winded way of saying he's a fucking fraud.
You brought up a couple things here that I really want to circle back to, especially like that particular moment of when he said that immigrants make us dirty or whatever, and then the backlash that followed that. But maybe just talking about like charting his career a little bit just internally within Fox News would be productive, because I grew up in a household that watched Fox pretty regularly.
Same.
And so I absorbed a lot of this material, and particularly like late night shows, or not late night, but the evening shows like O'Reilly. Like I just the hours of my like childhood and adolescent life that I spent listening to fucking like Bill O'Reilly, right? And who for a long time he was Fox, right? Like that kind of personality, the way he approached stories, the kind of tabloid nature of this pseudo journalism mixed with deep opinions, that was like Fox's flagship. And Tucker came into that world. Jordan, you probably know, it was like 2008, 2009 is when he got his start originally as like a Fox affiliate or something.
At Fox, yes. Yeah, that was around the time, because he got let go from MSNBC in like 2007, 2008.
Wow.
Yeah, talk about failing upward.
Dude, yeah. and here's the thing, and not really in his defense, but their justification was that the ratings were too low, and they replaced him, I think, with David Gregory. And this comes from the Bubba the Love Sponge stuff, but within like a month, David Gregory's ratings were like half of Tucker's. So they kind of fucked up, and it was like, by letting him go, because the ratings ended up tanking. But like, what a world we might be in if he just stayed at MSNBC. Like, what a different place we might be in. Anyway, sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but I just like
no. I mean, as you were pointing out, and he wasn't the only person to migrate from those other networks to Fox. A lot of other people, I mean, including like Glenn Beck, who one day hopefully we can talk a bit about. But
hell yeah.
I mean, what I think is interesting is the time that Tucker transitioned into Fox was also the time of the recession, in which Fox's messaging changed. Not in a total way, but there was a subtle changeover from a pure kind of like culture war, Bush era stuff, where a lot of the points of contact, I mean, a lot of them have still remained, but the points of contact were all the the culture war stuff. That's the stuff that O'Reilly would get really mad about. And in this weird moment, of the transition of both like the recession and a new Democratic president, Fox in its entire kind of packaging became more like populist, and it started to pivot to these economic issues, but framing them still within this like cultural lens. So like framing class through culture and doing this whole like working class, like, we're the network of the working man. Obviously Fox was like instrumental in covering the Tea Party to the point where like then it became a national story. And so that was the, I guess, political landscape or political culture of Fox as a network when Tucker started there.
And I think I just want to interject real quick. I think you were were right to point out the recession as a big turning point for Fox, but I also think that just the transition from, a George W. Bush administration where Fox's job is defending the establishment to the Obama years, where their main goal is to attack the establishment. So then they have to pivot and take on this sort of populist messaging.
Right. I mean, that's even still they even in the lens of defense that they're providing right now for the current administration, they're still constantly on the attack and frame everything, in the same language, obviously, that the president does. But there's a deep state or whatever. I mean, isn't Tucker's recent book about how liberal elites run the country or whatever? What is the name of his book?
Ship of Fools. Well, the thing is, he couches it in this bipartisan elite thing. And this is the perfect framework to tap into with the rise of Trump and also the populist rise with Sanders. It's hey, no, I actually don't like Democrats or Republicans. I'm not bound to any party system. But he ultimately is. He ultimately is bound by the right.
Yes.
But he just does just enough. It's easy to take shots at Mitch McConnell or something like that. You're not really speaking truth to power if you're doing that. But he wrote his book that's Washington and Beltway insiders and lobbyists and all this stuff. They don't care about you. They don't care about the real Americans. And it's the lowest hanging fruit, very easy stuff to do. My friend Parker Malloy read it and did a whole synopsis on how it's just pseudo-populism designed to trick viewers. It's completely farcical.
Because sometimes, he'll say something that, the first half of the sentence I can nod along to be the Clintons do not have your best interest at heart. I'm yeah, that's right. And then the answer to all of these things are just genocide.
Yeah.
In so many words, yeah. And I think you bring up a good thing to talk about here is that Michael Hayden just did that reporting for the Southern Poverty Law Center about Stephen Miller and those emails he received, and really the gist of it is the way in which Stephen Miller was sort of couching or coding these literally Nazi articles from Nazi websites and disseminating them and cleaning them up and couching them in more palatable terms and then getting them published by a more mainstream organization, laughably Breitbart. But the way I look at Tucker Carlson is his main thing nowadays seems to be doing ultimately the same thing. I mean, white supremacists love him. Richard Spencer loves him. David Duke loves him.
To that point, I have an article maybe I could read from. This was from last year. I'm sure you guys have seen this already, but from BuzzFeed about this data analysis that was run by somebody who I believe still is anonymous because they wanted to be protected by the backlash from this. But the name of this article about this report is Data Shows Tucker Carlson is the Daily Stormer's Favorite Pundit.
Yikes.
By Joseph Bernstein. And this article, I don't know if I'm actually going to read from it too much, but basically goes through and it shows that, the Daily Stormer, for those of you who have not poisoned your mind looking at this shit, may not know, is, incredibly popular, explicitly Nazi, white nationalist website, posts news stories, usually reposts of different stories, and including things and reframing their headlines to put things into a explicitly Nazi lens. Is one of the organizations that was involved in setting up the Unite the Right rally and every other awful Nazi thing that has happened. So this is I'm reading from this article. It says, an analysis run by an independent researcher who requested anonymity because he feared retaliation from Anglin, that's one of the neo-Nazis on a Daily Stormer, and other neo-Nazis, found that Carlson had been featured in 265 articles on the Daily Stormer between November 2016 and November 2018. By way of comparison, Sean Hannity, considered President Trump's most rock-ribbed supporter on Fox News, was featured in 27 articles in the same time period. Laura Ingraham, another Fox News host, in 4, and Lou Dobbs, whose Fox Business show frequently focuses on the alleged dangers posed by immigrants, 2.
So Carlson's their guy.
Exactly.
He's it'd be fair to say he's the foremost media elite guy that dovetails most handsomely with fucking fascism.
Well, I've got a quote right here that I typed out to read. This is a quote directly from the Daily Stormer. Tucker Carlson is basically Daily Stormer the show. Other than the language used, he is covering all of our talking points.
I don't think we'll be discussing any of that said language, because I can only imagine.
I mean, I have some of these if we're okay with reading some of these kind of shocking headlines.
Let's avoid the slurs, but yeah, let's hear them.
Well, no, I'm not going to say slurs. God damn. Oh, wait, this first one is a slur. Hold on. Fuck. All right, here, I'll read this. An April 2018 segment in which Carlson debated a Cuban-American news analyst over so-called cry closets for students at the University of Utah to de-stress during finals became, on the Daily Stormer, quote, Tucker rapes and impregnates crazy-eyed whore in a college campus cry closet.
What the
So this is the way that these websites will, they'll take like a video segment or, a write-up or a transcript of one of Tucker's shows and then extrapolate it, obviously heighten the language and use it to repackage it to their viewers, but the content is still the same.
So that's like a hair away from on YouTube where it says like Jordan Peterson destroys SJW.
Well, actually, to that point, because again, since Tucker for a while was not the headline guy on Fox, he was like a low-rent, mid-tier guy. I first really encountered him way after, I'd grown up into a big old boy, and I wasn't in that Fox News household no more. Around like 2014, 2015, when I started looking into stuff on the far right online just because it kept cropping up on like fucking YouTube, and I'd be like, what the fuck is this? I saw a ton of compilations generated by various alt-right actors that were called shit like, you can't cuck the tuck.
Oh, that's David Duke's line. David Duke has tweeted that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then it would be like a compilation video of like Tucker Carlson arguing with various people on his program or whatever. But yeah, I mean, he was a perfect avatar or just like rallying point for these talking points in that insurgent moment leading up to the 2016 presidential cycle.
So let me ask a question, Jordan. Like, yeah. I don't know if you have this off the top of your head, but like, is there a greatest hits list that you have off the top of your head that Tucker Carlson has done? Just like the fucking horrible, racist, insane shit that he's espoused?
Yeah. So not off the top of my head, but I quickly just Googled once you started asking the question. I kind of knew where it was going. My former colleague, Madeline Peltz at Media Matters, has an amazing compendium that she continually updates. And if you're interested in checking it out, anyone can just Google. If you just Google Tucker Carlson Descent White Supremacy, it's called Tucker Carlson's Descent into White Supremacy, a Timeline. And it is lengthy. She and I, when I was working at Media Matters, she and I were the ones who listened to all of the Bubba the Love Sponge tapes. And then she ended up writing it up. And it was just, she and I were in the thick of it on all this stuff. But so the work, I mean, it's just like there's so many. I'm trying to scroll through, and I've been scrolling for a while, and I'm still in like 2015. It's just it's a lot. But yeah, I mean, over the course of the last few years, especially, but it's been a slow play for the past decade or so. It probably started passively because I think a lot of people don't really recognize how and why they believe what they do, and especially when you get a white, religious, professional male, it's very easy for them, and especially with the background, like the private school background that he came up with and all this shit, it's very easy for him to formulate these views, especially if he's in a conservative system. But then it started to get really bad in 2015, 2016 with the rise of Trump and Tucker being a grifter on that front. Started cozying up to people more than he typically was, like Steve King, and started using immigration as a cudgel on his show. He started associating with the Proud Boys. He went on Gavin McInnes's show and became a Proud Boy with him.
Jesus.
Did he get the shit kicked out of him for that? Isn't that the initiation?
Yeah, I think that's like level 3 or something.
Tell me somebody punched his ass.
I saw a video one time of that fucking lame initiation where they have to name the 5 breakfast cereals or whatever, and the guy's punching him.
What?
It's just oh, you don't know about this, Dwight? So that's part of the initiations. You have to supposedly get the shit kicked out of you until you can name 5 breakfast cereals. But I've seen videos of it, and they're not fucking really hitting them. They're not actually really doing anything.
So he's continually attacked immigrants, Muslims, just poor people in general. But he also this white supremacy timeline. He also promoted explicitly white nationalist and white supremacist YouTube channels like Red Ice.
Yes.
You know what Red Ice is? He's vehemently defended Tommy Robinson for years. If you know who Tommy Robinson is, he has defended. I think it's Poland. Poland has a really fascist, white nationalist family policy that Tucker is super into. I mean, the list is just way too long. Everyone should just go check out Madeline Peltz's timeline of Tucker's descent into white supremacy, because if I were to read this, it would take me probably 3 hours to read this on air. It's so long. And she's got videos of everything.
Look, if there's fucking smoke, there's fire. If it stinks like shit, it's shit.
Yeah.
right? Like, dude is a fucking fash.
And I think the significant thing about Tucker Carlson, and he's not alone in this, but he's certainly one of the largest, if not the largest, actors in this play, where what has happened over the last decade, I want to say, but more intensely in the lead up to the 2016 election and then since then, is that white nationalist talking points, white nationalist framings, white nationalist worldviews have been slowly eking their way into the mainstream. And what a guy like Tucker does is that he basically is a launderer. Like, the concept of money laundering. Sure. He launders these ideas from, the people who are on the margins or discredited, like, somebody like David Duke, again, who's just like considered widely, a kook and not taken seriously by anybody in the mainstream, or alternatively, the visage of like Nazi punks or something like that, people who are not going to have the cultural affectations nor the platform to get their ideas to a large audience. Like, Tucker takes these things and then waters them down and maybe repeats them in a slightly more coded language, or a more presentable format with his fucking bow tie and his like crisp haircut, and then and he reaches millions of people on his program through that.
So Shane, is there like can you explain to us, like, I don't know, like historically, what does this mean, like in the larger fascist sense, or like in a transition to fascism? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because I know you've got a few.
I mean, again, I think that the slow creep of a fascist mentality into national consciousness vis-a-vis, the media, as obviously a guy like Tucker is an actor in, it happens along the program that I just laid out, which is that ideas that seem fringe or coming from explicitly demagogic or explicitly violent people become more sanitized. I mean, fascism as an ideology is inherently syncretic, and so it will adopt and like kind of shift itself into whatever the local cultural signals are, right? I think when we think of fascism, and when most people think of fascism, you think of like the obvious aesthetic tells. So you think about like, the SS or stormtroopers or people in boots, the Nazis broadly, or again, like sort of street gangs and stuff. And that's obviously a very core part of how fascism operates and how it gains power. And it's not entirely absent from our current predicament either. Like, these things are present, right?
The Proud Boys, literally.
Yeah, we just mentioned a fascist gang. Like, in terms of like the role that somebody like Tucker Carlson plays, again, his role is to take these arguments, take these framings, regurgitate them in a slightly more palatable way for a larger audience, and then I think, as Jordan pointed out, why a guy like him is situated to do this so well is that he has no scruples, he has no real ideological points, like he probably doesn't necessarily believe strongly in any one thing to the next, except some vague sense of identity and his own status, and so he can always defend whatever he says by pulling back a second and being like, well, hold on a second, I'm just asking questions, or I'm just posing things in a certain way, like, why are you so sensitive, or why? I mean, like, most recently, I believe it was this year, right, where he just straight up said white supremacy is a hoax.
Really?
Right?
Yes, it was earlier this year.
Yeah, it was right after the El Paso shooting, right?
Yep, and the manifesto came out.
Yeah, he went on his program and he said it's a conspiracy theory perpetrated by the Democrats in order to, attack the president or whatever, and that, white supremacy isn't a really big deal. And again, the way that this will operate and the way that this argument gets put forward is like, well, if somebody doesn't have a swastika armband on, then they're not a white supremacist, which is obviously like a fucking incredibly surface reading of any political movement or ideology. And then on the other hand, like, a lot of these guys are literally wearing swastikas. so the idea that it doesn't exist is totally, it either comes from, a deliberate sense of, I know the truth and I'm trying to obfuscate it, or just like total negligence and a lack of any journalistic integrity or any sense of like true intellectual inquiry to be like, oh, this totally doesn't exist. It's a hoax. just to stay focused for a minute on that one particular comment that he made, Jordan, as you were pointing out, you said the string of, various moments in his chronology as a TV news personality where he's slowly but surely had one scandal or another where he said something that maybe went a little bit too far, a little bit over the edge. And we talked a little bit about like calling immigrants dirty and how he had this huge drop off afterwards of advertisers. And I know you were on top of that story. So do you want to get into that a little bit?
Totally. So yeah, December 2018, middle of December, he was doing a story about immigration, and he said, immigrants make America dirtier and poorer and more divided. And this is when I was working at Media Matters. I'm no longer working with Media Matters. I'm working at a bunch of other places as a consultant. But the first thing was I took that clip, tweeted it out, and then I sent it to Pacific Life, who at the end of that segment, Pacific Life ran a banner ad, and it was not like a regular commercial. It was like, hey, Tucker Carlson Tonight is brought to you by Pacific Life. And it was burned in the Fox graphics and that whole package. It was part of the actual show. So my colleague at the time, Andrew Lawrence, and we took that clip and we spliced it and was like, here's Tucker saying this, dipped to white, here's Pacific Life. And we juxtaposed, this is your logo next to this guy saying, immigrants make us dirtier and poorer and more divided. And I sent it to him. I said, hey, do you agree with this? Like, this is your ad. Your ad ran on this right after this comment as a brand and company who I assume purports to value diversity and center it. Do you agree with this? And they very quickly replied no. And they pulled the ads. And I was shocked because that's like the most expensive ad slot on each show.
Fucking amazing.
And from there, it just became a race not to be last. The next like 2 weeks, it was just like dropping like flies. Just bam, bam, bam. All these people were dropping off. There was a conversation that I had, if you guys know the group Sleeping Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My buddy Matt runs Sleeping Giants, and we were talking. That happened on a Thursday, and we got Pacific Life to drop on Friday, and we were talking we were texting, and he's like, "Man, the only thing that sucks is this happens going into a weekend. No one's gonna remember this on Monday." And man, people remembered it on Monday. I was like so happy he was wrong, because then Indeed dropped, and then Voya dropped, and we had like 15 to 20 people drop in the next like couple weeks. And then it came to like the holiday season, Christmas and New Year's, and everyone thought it was over. And it did slow down for like a couple days into January. No one was like announcing that they were dropping. And then this fucking idiot does a segment about how when women earn more money, it leads to the decline of men. And then it just kicked off this whole new wave. Like, he would have been fine if he just shut his fucking mouth, but he couldn't. He couldn't. And then it led to this another wave of advertiser drops. So it like plateaued, and he was fine. He was in the clear. But then he opened his fucking mouth, and it just like, then they were done. And that was just like, that was it for the next couple months. Just a steady stream of advertiser losses. I think the total loss was like tens of millions.
Yes.
70 some companies publicly dropped. Many more dropped quietly. We had the data to prove it. It's basically now just like the same thing every night. It's companies like MyPillow, Cabela's, who are never going to... I mean, dude, MyPillow became like one of the heaviest subsidizers of Tucker. They like started running 2-minute ads, at least 2 breaks. He lost a complete commercial break. He had 5, sometimes 6. He's down to 4 permanently.
Wow.
In those 4, there's 2 2-minute long commercials for MyPillow. We saw the rise of Fox House ads. It went just a couple a night to like over half of the ad load every night being Fox House ads. And then we saw a ton of PSAs being integrated into their nightly ad load. So it was a couple companies here and there. It would be like companies that were never going to leave. I guess WeatherTech, is publicly linked to Trump, or openly. The CEO is like openly supportive of Trump. Things like that. Pods, same thing. It's just companies that weren't ever going to, they don't care, would stay. And then it'd be like PSAs and then like 15 Fox House ads. Like other Fox shows or Fox Nation, all that shit. It's bleak. It's been reported out multiple times that Trump talked to the Murdochs and was like, basically like, hey, protect Tucker. The Lackland, who now runs Fox, will not do anything about it because he doesn't want to give activists a win. And this is just like, he's now like hurting his bottom line as a result, because he refuses to do anything because he's so stubborn. At what point does that become a breach of fiduciary duty if you are
Exactly.
the CEO and you're just willingly take losses? You're willingly taking losses just like because you're stubborn. I mean, if I was a shareholder, I'm not. But if I was a shareholder, I would just fucking sue him.
So, I mean, look, this is, you fucking hit every button that I like, which is talking about, like, you know, I'm just sitting here
You
vibrating.
like shareholders? Or?
He's one of,
Dwight owns a lot of stock in Fox, so he's,
It's just, I'm sweating right now,
he's
man.
appreciating the advice.
Thanks for having me on Help the Rich podcast.
I'm just feverishly texting my broker.
Sell.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the part of the point of Eat the Rich is to like explain how the machinations of things like fascism and climate change and just like capitalism in general affects a very small group of people's wallets, and the rest of us are helping to make them richer. I mean, that's essentially how capitalism works. It works for capital. And so the point of News Corp, which owns Fox News, right? The point of News Corp being in business is to make the Murdochs as majority shareholders money. And so when you or we as fans of what you do, Jordan, and like as what the rest of us that are listening want to think about, like, how do we stop fascism, or how do we stop these movements or these incremental changes or normalization towards fascism? Fascism is about money, and fascism is about making sure that those that have it keep it, and those that have the hands on the structures of power don't let it go to the power of the people, right? And the power of the collective ownership of things. So that happening is just like, to me, it's like a huge victory for the left, or it's a huge victory for people, because like literally taking tens of millions of dollars out of a primetime fucking slot.
Yeah, it's their flagship slot.
It's their primetime slot, and I want to talk about that in a second, or maybe I'll just like talk about the thing I want to talk about now. It's like hurting them their bottom line. At some point, there's a trigger point where they're going to realize like it's time to go, or it's time to stop it. And Shane, you've brought this up. We were talking about, I think this was on the Gina Reinhart program, where we were talking about surely there's consultants that take a look at these pressure campaigns that we put on to these large corporations and can quantify how much money are you going to lose by not dropping this dude. If this dude keeps saying this shit and we keep catching the flack, how much money, how do we quantify? Really, how do we make the decision whether or not to keep him or drop him? I mean, obviously in the case of this, like, you know, tens of millions of dollars wasn't it. We didn't hit that number yet, and maybe that time might come in the future. Like in the case of Bill O'Reilly, what was it, like $12 million they were paying out in private to women that he had sexually assaulted or hurt in the workplace? That wasn't enough of a number for them. But then the campaign came against him, and the public pressure came, our pressure came, and he was canned. Fucking awesome. There will be a point for that for Tucker Carlson too as well.
Yeah. One thing, so kind of inside baseball, but if people are interested, the way Fox kind of deflects from that immediate loss is they just spread it out. So I notice a lot of companies moving their ads to the very last commercial break in the show before Tucker came on. So that's Fox News, I can't remember, whatever the fuck it's called, but Shannon Bream or Martha McCallum. The story with Martha McCallum is on at 7, and then he comes on at 8. And her final commercial break used to be around 7:45, 7:50. And as the campaign progressed, it shifted to starting at 7:55. And all of the blue chip companies that dropped Tucker just moved their ads to that slot, and they would just run a 4-minute commercial break, 4.5, and she would come on and be like, "That's the story. Tucker Carlson's up next," and have a seamless handoff into the next hour. So you would catch most of the people who are explicitly tuning in for Tucker or already have it on as like the viewership peaked. You would still catch them, and then you could just wash your hands and be like, well, we didn't know where the ads are on. We have no control. Fox also bundles and says, hey, if you just like relinquish control of where we run the ads, you'll get a lower rate. So there's companies that they will just put in there and subject them to flack from people for running ads on Tucker Carlson. And then it's companies like PCmatic who do this explicitly. Companies that can't really afford that time slot, but will just take the hit with this bundled package overall. And then they just be like, hey, we have no control. This is how we do our ad structure. So it's another opportunity for these companies to get in there, fill a little bit of time, and then also have some plausible deniability.
Fuck. And that's not inside baseball to me, though. Like I think that's extremely valuable. Fuck, I find it very interesting as shit.
Oh,
fuck.
no.
These fuckers.
So Fox has insulated itself from advertiser losses by shifting and systematically shifting its revenue away from advertiser revenue and toward something called carriage fees. So carriage fees is, let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, Dwight is an Xfinity customer and he pays $50 a month.
That sounds right. How did you know that, Jordan?
I just did my research. So
This guy's good, man.
Oh, good.
This guy's good.
I know.
So Dwight is subscribing to Xfinity. He pays $50 a month. What you don't see on your bill is how that gets broken down. And what happens is within that bill, every month you pay a little bit to every single cable channel. And it for MSNBC, it's like 66 cents a month. For CNN, it's like 90 cents a month. And for Fox, it's close to $2. Fox has also been aggressive in its negotiations to work its way into the standard or basic package in cable and satellite companies across the country. So that leads to way more subscribers and also at a way higher rate, which leads to way more income. That buoys them in ways that other channels, it gives them a luxury that other channels don't have. So advertiser losses at Fox don't hit them as hard as it would any other channel. But to get there, Fox has been really aggressive and deliberative in their efforts. So if you've ever seen the ticker at the bottom of a channel that's like, hey, Dwight, what's up, man? You're about to lose ESPN. Call your cable company right now. You're about to lose ESPN, dude. Here's the 1-800 number. Call Dish. Harass the person making $9 an hour. It's their fault. Yell at them because you want ESPN. Yeah. You, the angry sports fan, calls and was like, what's up, motherfucker? I want ESPN. Give it to me. And the more those calls come in, the more that shows the cable companies there's a demand for it. And it gives ESPN leverage in negotiations. These fees are agreed to every couple years. So Fox is really proactive. They'll put that ticker on Fox constantly, even if they don't actually need to. They go into these negotiations in a very contentious way, and they want to increase every single time. And, because of the basic package presence, they reach like 90-some million people. They just people who are passively paying for this, even if they don't watch it. Their nightly viewership at its peak is like 3.5 million people. So you get like 86 million people who are not watching Fox paying for it. So you have this passive income that Fox has, quietly raised the prices on, despite not watching it. And they have this huge insurance package and safety net when situations like Tucker's advertiser boycott spikes.
That is so fucked. That is so fucked.
And I think this is the first time I'm having this thought, but those kinds of high pressure tactics will work more on Fox's audience because the median age is like,
108.
So older people are going to be more likely to fall for that, or in general just be like less aware of that even occurring and just sort of passively paying for it, like you said.
Yeah, it's just Lackland is just showed that he's not going to do anything. He doesn't want to give in to the whims of the activist groups.
That speaks more to the reason that he doesn't have to, because his bottom line isn't impacted as much. They've figured out how to fucking hedge their bets and weaponize their viewership.
Right. Totally.
They turn their viewers into activists.
And to supplement that, they've developed that Fox Nation subscription service where, for the boomers who can figure it out. But this also speaks to what we were talking about off mic. Chris and I were talking about scammy jobs that people are forced into during the recession. Mm-hmm. Fox Nation relies on a somewhat predatory model where it's like, hey, join Fox Nation online, 99 cents. And as soon as you join, if you don't practically cancel, it spikes to like $10 a month. And how many people who watch Fox, knowing that the demographics of their viewers skews into the 60s, how many of those people do you think are actively programming that login into a smart TV or some device where they're actually watching Fox Nation programming? And Fox Nation programming, I cannot stress to you enough, fucking sucks. It's like Brian Kilmeade's cooking show. It's like Steve Doocy washes his car. It's so fucking bad, dude.
Do Diamond and Silk have a show on there?
Yes, they do.
That's what I thought. Yes. I almost have to admire them because they are just purely grifting the Trump-loving audience, I feel like. Good
Maybe
for them,
to bring
man.
things full circle here a little bit, we've been talking a lot about the recession, Fox's role in it, and then obviously as well, this seemingly inevitability of Trump. And I wanted to read a little passage from this fantastic book called Fox Populism by Reese Peck. It's just a long-form study of that shift that happened in Fox and its rhetoric and its programming and stuff post-recession, and what that means for the current political climate that we're in and a number of the other issues that we've covered today. So I'm just going to read a little bit from it here. The Great Recession posed a far greater political communication challenge for Republicans than attempts to secure public support for the Bush administration's war on terror. The 9/11 attacks of 2001 had already primed the American public for war, significantly assisting Fox's patriotic programming strategy and its hawkish Republican foreign policy stance. But the 2008 financial collapse and the historic recession that followed presented an entirely different set of political conditions. This was now becoming an environment rife with anti-corporate sentiment, as poll after poll showed the public's trust in businesses dipping to all-time lows. Economy-related news stories now came to utterly dominate the national media, and income inequality, a topic Democrats had owned for decades, was about to become the central political issue of the moment, pushing the national security and culture war politics, God, guns, and gays, of the Bush era far to the wayside. In such a political climate, one might assume a conservative network like Fox News would downplay issues of income inequality. Instead, Fox's top programs placed the topics of wealth distribution and class hierarchy at the top of their editorial agenda, but approached these issues in such a way that ingeniously reconfigured the meaning of socioeconomic divisions so as to negate the market's role in producing them. In the place of economic antagonisms, Fox News pundits advance a cultural normative understanding of class conflict that has been a staple of conservative populism since the McCarthy era. And now just skipping a little bit ahead here, get to this concluding point. Fox built its counter-elite news brand by combining two class-based traditions of public culture, one native to the political field in populism, and one native to the commercial media field in tabloid journalism. Donald Trump, a reality TV star come populist politician, embodies this stylistic synthesis through and through. Yet, he is less the trigger and more the capstone of a populist discursive trend that Fox News set in motion decades before Trump and Breitbart were making headlines. So I wanted to read that as a somewhat of a closer for today's show. And just to put it back into context with Tucker Carlson, I mean, the thing that gives Tucker Carlson any sort of edge, because as Jordan is somebody who's watched a huge amount of his programming, you can probably attest to, like, he's not particularly charismatic or interesting, especially in comparison to, somebody like O'Reilly. For all things that can be said about him, it was at least had an element of showmanship and entertainment to his program in his like performative rage and the way he would get, really angry and present himself. Like, Tucker Carlson is definitely a limp fish of any way you look at him, but he does position himself as this sort of anti-establishment, anti-elitist guy, and is echoing this populist rhetoric that we've talked a bit about. And, he's one figure in this, and the reason why I really like that last kind of concluding point from that passage from Peck's book is that, I mean, this is something that I think a lot of our audience and a lot of people on the left are probably very comfortable and familiar with already, but this criticism or, the throwing a wrench into this idea that Trump is somehow unique, or that he comes in this, totally new position in politics, and the things that he's saying are just so crazy and, like, so far outside of what has been mainstream politics. And it's like, fucking Fox News has been pushing this shit for literally decades, and especially the last decade. And anybody who, again, maybe grew up in a household with Fox News or for whatever god-awful reason have to suffer through it, then you could watch like the Trump campaign and just realize like he's just repeating what he's seeing on TV. Like, this is not like a particularly new formulation that he came up with or that he's somehow a mastermind of. If anything, he's parroting a slightly more abrasive version of the whole discursive ecosystem that Fox has put through, and Tucker Carlson is certainly a huge part of that shift.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention, I mean, again, to bring it home, like as we do on Eat the Rich, we try to examine what role the subject of the show, what role they play in our political economy. And Tucker Carlson's like an interesting one because he's he's very effective in what he does because his role is as a propagandist, but also he holds a dual role as a member of capital. So everything he says is directly in his class interests because he is propagandizing conservative and neo-fascist points as will benefit his class interest as capital. He's rich as shit. He comes from money. And more poignantly, he comes from unearned money. And more poignantly, he comes from a family of conservative shit-eaters that have unearned money. And Fox News obviously does their work as a propaganda tool of the ruling class that weaponizes the working class against itself, right? It's meant to divide. It's like a racist autoimmune disease. And it takes like the cultural trigger points that make us angry and aggravates them. Like, you know, like sometimes dogs get hot spots. These like little kind of like these part. It's just like a little raw part, and it irritates them or whatever, and they bite at it and lick at it and shit like that. That's what Fox News goes for. But they take like these cultural hot spots and throw like itching powder on it. And just back to the role of what he plays in a political in the capitalist political economy. I don't think that somebody like him would become as powerful as he is in a socialist economy, right? Because his job is to maintain power for the capitalist class. And by the way, too, I was thinking about this today. Like, his propaganda works hand in hand with like a liberal identifying ruling class in a specific way. I was thinking about today how often we hear from media and politicians, they love to use the word divided, like we're a divided country, or issues are divisive, or we're split as a nation. Exactly. But the capitalist class loves that we're divided. And people in like members of him, like members of the elite media like him, like making like, they make like these sit down hour-long focus group specials about talking about how divided we are. They do that to obfuscate the core problem of our American lifestyle, which is the root of what we're talking about, which is capitalism. Like, in every fucking poll, when you ask Americans what is their biggest concern, the economy is their largest one. They purposely frame it like that because they don't want us to frame it in what it is, which is really capitalism.
This is the obvious hypocrisy to point out, but I mean, it's still worth doing. And I think the historian Rutger Bregman did it the best when he went on Tucker Carlson's show, and he just said straight up, you are a millionaire, working on behalf of billionaires. And so this whole idea that simply because Tucker maybe positions himself as, anti-elitist, which again is always through this cultural frame. It's not really through a class frame, even though he pretends it is. Like, at the end of the day, he's a fucking millionaire. Like, the whole idea, like, and not even in the sense of like these other rich guys that I was pointing out. And this is what really boggles me personally as somebody who like studies media. Like, again, he's not charismatic. He doesn't even have there are just so many, again, O'Reilly, Hannity are both great examples of like the gruff, tough, old style, like version of masculinity where you could at least like just through your personal affect pretend to be a member of the working class. Like, Tucker Carlson is just the classic prep school dipshit who has failed upward his entire life, and he's and even that face that is just so great that he does, that has become perpetually like meme after meme, where he's just like with his fucking mouth open, just is so.
We're all doing it now.
It so perfectly encapsulates this like weird paradox of like how a guy like that can pretend for a second that he relates to quote unquote like normal people or a regular guy,
And on that point, so Tucker got praise, I think, in the spring. He gave a mealy-mouthed criticism of capitalism, and that prompted a couple think pieces like, wow, Tucker Carlson just started the most interesting discussion on capitalism on the right.
Nobody's thought about it before he did.
Please. I mean, the fuck, come on. And if you actually listen to his segment on it, which I'm honestly shocked anyone took that seriously, but just whatever, more power to you, I guess. If you need a clip or you need to hit your monthly writing goal, whatever. The people wrote about it as if it was sincere is just kind of galling, because his conclusion wasn't that the system was inherently flawed. It was that we need nicer bosses. We need people.
Oh, fuck.
I'm telling you, man. I when he started talking about it, I was watching that and I was just like, where's he going with this? this.
Yeah.
There's no way he's going towards socialism. There's no way he's going towards, especially not communism. What's he doing? And he ended up with, the problem isn't the system, it's that we have greedy bosses. Dude, that the fucking system is designed to promote and advance greedy bosses. The whole system is fucking flawed, man. If you do you honestly think there's an alternative? No, the whole system is fucked up. But it's just enough to prompt the discussion to further this narrative that Tucker's actually the populist pundit.
What a joke.
Right.
So it then begs the question, right? Like, okay, Fox News and Tucker Carlson are the conservative, neo-fascist, fucking ruling class, whatever you want to call them. So, like, what would we think of when we think about, like, an opposition to that? I mean, a liberal opposition is not really an opposition.
No, we got to put Chris on TV.
Yes. But like think about this is not a fair comparison to draw, but like Anderson Cooper also inherited an enormous amount of wealth.
Oh, dude, he's a fucking Vanderbilt.
Subject, absolutely the subject of a future episode.
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. But like he's not the opposition for that, and Fox News, especially. And by the way, we just have to mention this: the headquarters for Fox News is in fucking Manhattan.
I led a protest outside their headquarters in March.
Really?
Yep.
So if we're talking about what's the opposition to this, we have to think outside of, a for-profit media venture or something like that. Honestly, I think this, Eat the Rich, what you do on
Subscribe
Twitter.
to Eat the Rich. That's how you start blogs.
No, like...
We're launching our Patreon soon.
Do you really
hate Tucker Carlson? Give us money.
Yeah. If you actually hate Fox, you subscribe to this podcast. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. That's the only option.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like it has to be in the mold of what we want the future to look like, which is decentralization.
Totally.
Which is not just one entity, which is an apparatus of entities.
Man, I don't know if I agree with that part.
Buy our t-shirts when we
or
come
just
out.
Or just one
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly. Socialism under one podcast is probably what I would advocate for, but we'll get into that at a later date.
It's not social. It's not real communism.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just state podcastism. This it's a long time coming. I mean, look, the boomers got a bad rap, and they fucking deserve it because they know they could never have done this, a decentralization or a transfer of wealth and power to a collective ownership. They tried in the late 60s, and the thing that they did was they never made it about class. They just had like a vague white liberal view of equalities. All the meanwhile, Black Panthers, for instance, were fighting for economic equality and getting fucking murdered by police, targeted by intelligence communities like fucking the FBI. But for us, if we think about an opposition and not letting this stuff go forward, millennials, Zoomers, what's up, Zoomer fans? We have no choice but to vanquish this shit. Because if we don't, our planet is finished. Humans are finished, and it's going to take hundreds of thousands of years for the planet to get out from under like high-density polyethylene plastic trays with Swanson stamped on the back.
So, usually one of the ways we like to wrap up the show is talking about, what verdict or what sentence we would give the various nefarious actors that we talk about. Dwight, since you just brought up Swanson, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Make Tucker Carlson a Swanson dinner. I'm saying cook for him a Swanson dinner. That's what I said.
Right, make him a Swanson dinner.
Yeah, you can leave that in.
Perfect. Actually, it would be a pretty good punishment to just have to eat solely Swanson dinners for the rest of your life as every single meal.
Tucker Carlson has never eaten a Swanson dinner in his entire life.
Oh, absolutely not.
I know we got to go, but just to make this point, the entire Swanson family fortune came from a system of capitalism which disallowed people from being able to have the time or the money to buy or cultivate fresh produce and shit, or even cook for themselves, or have someone available that didn't have to work in their household to cook for the family, that it was just something of convenience, so you could just go back to the fucking factory line and continue making money for capital. All of that wealth is just compressed money and time and energy from the working class that went to the Swanson family because it was just a tool that allowed workers to make more money for capital. So fuck him for that reason.
So if hell is real and there are circles of hell and Tucker goes there, his circle of hell, he should just be surrounded by immigrants. I guess I assume bad immigrants or holograms, so they don't actually have to go there. But his hell, okay, let's just say, imagine it's not a binary construct like a lot of like Christian and Christian religions understand it to be. There's like a reward in heaven and a punishment in hell. There's just this afterlife, right? And it's either good or bad, and your surroundings are either good or bad, right? So if you are a good person, let's just say for the sake of this hypothetical, his is bad. And his surroundings, he has to be surrounded by all of the people he demonized for eternity. No one he loves, no one he actually, assuming he can love, no one he knew, no one white, no one Christian. It's all people different than him. And he has to spend eternity in this infinite lifespan in the afterlife surrounded by people that he demonized the rest of his, like for his entire professional career. That's my punishment for him. Non-violent, existential, pretty fucking miserable for that guy.
I don't know. It's kind of weird because that place sounds lit as hell.
Yeah, it sounds great for any other reasonable person. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Holograms, they shouldn't have to be surrounded by him.
Or in a redistributive, justice-based, socialist political world, we seize his property, we take his house, forcing him to become homeless, and then we put him on a bus to San Francisco.
There we go.
Survive for fucking 1 week. Homeless in San Francisco, please, Tucker Carlson. We will issue you exactly one MyPillow to sleep on. We'll
Which,
afford
dude,
you
I
that
hear
luxury.
they suck. I hear those pillows absolutely suck.
I have never once given any amount of thought to the brand or company of pillow that I rest my little toesy woesies on.
I have no idea. I have no idea. Same here.
Well, Jordan, we got to take a quick break and pay the bills. My Pillow, guys. I've been sleeping on My Pillow for a while. Jordan, obviously, it's a fucking pleasure having you on Eat the Rich. It's just so cool. Sorry for everybody that has been demoralized for listening to the awfulness that is.
I'm
Tucker
not sorry.
Carlson.
I'm glad I demoralized you.
It's kind of our brand. Is there anything? Tell us about what you got going on and some big moves. Would you like to plug?
If you follow my Twitter, you could figure out what I'm doing now.
Great.
You know what? I do have something that I have in the works, and you guys are going to be the first. So, do you guys remember the albums in the early 2000s, Rock Against Bush?
Yeah, I do.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, sweet. Yes. Rock Against Bush was like a formative musical moment for me and helped shape my politics and helped shape my understanding of the world and how music and politics intersect. I've been on some conversations, some calls in the past week and part of conversations the past couple weeks with people familiar with digital musical infrastructure and bands to resurrect that in my spare time. And just got to the point today where I reached the point where it's definitely going to happen in the next couple months. We've got a system in place now and a couple bands who are going to be kind of like leading the effort and also helping me reach out to other groups who can help, tap into this wider musical infrastructure, but also get their songs on these albums, playlists, whatever. What we're going to do is start to develop evolving and politically relevant albums and playlists on Bandcamp around this theme, resurrect that theme. It might not be Rock Against Blank, but also just whatever. And then redirect the proceeds from these things. So Chris goes on to Bandcamp and it's like, hey, $10, you get all of these songs from all of these like punk and metal groups, $10. You buy the album, that $10 goes straight to an anti-war organization, goes straight to an organization that's doing work on the border, goes straight to an organization that's fighting for Medicare for all, and just continue to leverage the power of music and their fan bases and push them towards progressive activism. Those purchases then plug into those progressive orgs and then turns these consumers into supporters, activists, whomever. This has been like my dream for a while, my creative like goal. And today it just became a reality. So I'm like really
That's so
excited.
cool, man.
And you guys can hear the first
Oh,
one.
yeah,
Yeah,
dude.
this is it. I've wanted to do music and politics and activism intersecting for a while, and today I learned I can.
Absolutely outstanding, dude. I'm all in. Fucking all in.
Chuffed to bits.
I'm chuffed to bits. And as it progresses, if you'd like to come on and talk about it again, that'd be fucking awesome.
Stay cool, folks.
Jordan, thank you so much for stay cool, folks, man. Sounds like we're going to. Stay cool, folks.
Yeah.
That's it. Stay cool, folks.
All right, rock and roll.
Thanks,
Thank you,
man.
Jordan. We appreciate it, man.
Get a world away from the everyday with new Swanson International Dinners. German, Chinese, Italian, Mexican style.
They take you away from the everyday to a world where the food makes you want to stay.
Those real sensational
International frozen dinners from Swanson.
German style, a generous helping of sauerbraten, spätzles, and Bavarian cabbage. Chinese style, chicken chow mein and fried shrimp. Italian style, lasagna with meat and cheese, tortoni pudding. Mexican style, with a beef enchilada and tamales in the fiesta meaty sauce. Get a world away from the everyday with
these real sensational
International frozen dinners from Swanson.